Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to see you here. I'm going to talk to you about my paper titled "The Soft Forensic Gradient Method for Maximal Entropy Reinforcement Learning." My presentation will be given in four parts. The first part relates to some preliminaries about maximal entropy reinforcement learning. The second part will present or propose a deep soft forensic gradient algorithm in detail. The third part concerns the experiments and applies some conclusions. To begin with, I would like to introduce maximal entropy reinforcement learning, which is a rather popular framework that can handle the task with multimodality by augmenting standard maximal objective with an entropy regularization term. Maximal entropy reinforcement learning tries to connect the optimal control with probabilistic inference, and a stochastic policy may emerge as the optimal answer. Moreover, framing control as inference will produce policies that try to learn all of the ways instead of the best way to perform the task. Based on standard reinforcement learning, the sole goal of maximal entropy reinforcement learning is to maximize the entropy regularized objective, which is defined by augmenting the expected sum of rewards with entropy term as shown by equation 1, where I is a reward function and HPy is the entropy of policy, and tau is the user-specified temperature parameter that controls the degree of entropy regularization. Compared to standard reinforcement learning, maximal entropy reinforcement learning has many amazing advantages. First, entropy regularization encourages exploration and helps prevent early convergence to suboptimal policies. Second, the maximal entropy framework provides a better exploration mechanism for seeking out the best mode in a multimodal reward landscape, and the resulting policies are more robust in the face of adversarial perturbations. Next, I will introduce some basic concepts in maximal entropy reinforcement learning, including soft function and the soft Bayesian equation. Soft Q function describes the expected sum of discounted future rewards and the entropies after taking an action AT instead ST, and then after following the policy path as shown by equation 2. Then by one step bootstrapping with soft Q function, soft Bayesian equation can be formulated as equation 3, which is generally used to learn the critical network in maximal entropy reinforcement learning. That's the first part, and now let's turn our attention to the second part about our proposed deep soft policy gradient method. The first contribution I would like to talk about is the soft policy gradient. Specifically, suppose that the MPP satisfies the policy pi is differentiable with respect to its parameter. Then soft policy gradient can be obtained as shown by from equation 4. The expression of soft policy gradient is surprisingly simple. In particular, there are no terms of the derivative of rho pi, which means the effect of policy change on the distribution of states as load appear. Moreover, load that the constant 1 can be dropped because and the performance will not be affected much because soft policy gradient is true for any baseline that is not a function of actions. Okay, let's review soft Bayesian equation introduced before and consider the case in which the critical Q is approximated with a neural network with parameter omega. And then we can define the soft Bayesian backup operator tau as equation 7. Just as DPG, the creative Q omega can be learned by using previous or policy transitions sampled from repeated buffer or past experience. Then the parameter omega can be optimized by minimizing the software loss, which is defined as the sample mean square error between the output of creative and the software backup operator tau. However, there are two challenges when we are using software policy gradient due to the stochastic policies under the maximal entropy reinforcement framework. First, software policy gradient depends on the joint distribution of state action rather than only state distribution, which makes it impossible to apply software policy gradient with previous of policy transitions. Second, there exists the term Q omega explicitly, which means that software Q function will directly influence the gradient and lead to unstable update of policy. For the first challenge, we propose double summoning approach. Main idea underlying which is to divide the expectation into two separate sampling steps. Specifically, we have first sample number transitions from the repeat buffer and then sample number m actions AIJ with the current actor network for each sample state SI. Then the resulting sample software policy gradient can be obtained as equation 9. Furthermore, we propose gradient clipping approach to tackling the second challenge. Gradient clipping aims to limit the software policy gradient to an appropriate rank by a global law. In fact, the clipped software policy gradient will help stabilize the learning in our method. That's all for the methodology, and now let's go on to the experiments part. Before showing our results, I would like to introduce our baselines. The first baseline is DDBG. As we all know, DDBG learns a deterministic actor by applying deterministic policy gradient, but different from DDBG. The optimal policy is stochastic under the maximal entropy framework. The second baseline is software algorithm, which is the state-of-the-art of policy deep reinforcement learning algorithm under the maximal entropy framework. However, in software algorithm, a separate function approximately for state value is necessary to stabilize the learning. In contrast, such a function approximator can be avoided in our method by applying double sampling approach. Okay, the figure shows the results of DSPG against the two baselines on continuous control benchmarks. Where x-axis is the time steps and the y-axis represents the total rewards, and the results show that all proposed DSPG can substantially outperformance DDBG in all of the tasks. Moreover, we can also conclude that all proposed DSPG beat the performance of the software architecture in Hopper and Work2D, and can match the performance of software architecture in AND and half-cheetah. In practice, how to choose between our proposed DSPG and software architecture in your work seems difficult. Here we suggest to to take into account the available computing resources and the cost of sampling. For tasks with limited computing resources and by the low cost of sampling, or per cost, DSP seems to be better. Okay, finally, let's briefly summarize some conclusions. First, software policy gradient will derive laterally extends deterministic policy gradient for standard reinforcement learning. But different from standard reinforcement learning, the optimal policy in all method is stochastic. Second, double sampling and gradient clipping approaches are essential for or propose the DSPG under maximal entropy reinforcement learning framework. In fact, additional application studies show that DSPG will not work without double sampling or gradient clippings. Finally, DSPG can match or beat the state-of-the-art software-accretive algorithm in continuous benchmark such as Majorco, but all purpose does not need but all method does not need a separate function or approximator for state value, which is necessary to stabilize learning in software accretive and will lead to additional approximation errors. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
In terms of overall sample complexity, doesn't double sampling have disadvantage compared to single sampling method?
Yes, double sampling double sampling can in our method is significant because because the software policy gradient we derive depends on the joint distribution of state and action, which means we cannot use directly the samples from the replay buffer due to the distribution is different between the data from the replay buffer and the current actor.
And I'll be presenting this work, which is called Incremental Learning of Action Models. Okay, so we are interested in task planning when we use it at the abstract task level. We represent the domain and planning problems with predicates. We have an example here, which is the logistics domain, and can represent the location of the truck with this predicate at. And so we describe the state transitions in this domain using action models. We have an example here. This action describes the process of loading the package into the truck. So this action model is described using the planning language called PPDDL, and we have to define the precondition of this action. So the precondition says that the truck and the package has to be in the same location. If this precondition is not true and we execute the action, it will fail, and we assume that in this work the state will remain unchanged. And the effect of executing this action is that the package will be in the truck and will no longer be in its current location. Right, so the motivation for this work is that we want to learn the action models because they are typically hard to encode by human experts. And also, in complex domains, the action models can be difficult to learn using training data that is acquired in a single planning episode. So we can certainly accumulate the training data over multiple planning episodes. However, in non-stationary domains where the probabilistic effects change over time, the model learned will not fit well. So what we want to achieve in this work is that we want to learn the action models incrementally over multiple planning episodes without the need to accumulate training data from previous episodes. So we use the framework of model-based reinforcement learning, where we balance between exploitation and exploration. We use the count-based exploration schema that's introduced in RMAX. So RMAX basically constructs an approximate MDP, where unknown states leads to a self-absorbing synthetic state with maximum reward. So you implicitly balance between exploration and exploitation. However, the problem with RMAX is that in the large state space domain, all states are unknown from the start, so RMAX could always explore a lot and you will never exploit. So some work resolve this challenge by reducing the size of the state space, making some assumptions such as the state space is structured. In our work, we use the relational structure that is inherent in planning problems that are being described with predicates. So when we count the state is unknown if the number of times that it's been visited is less than a user-defined threshold. So we count the number of times that the state has been visited, and we consider states are relationally equivalent. For example, if we have a block A that's on block B, and we have a block B that's on block A, we consider that these two states are equivalent. Next, we also consider prior action models that had been learned in the previous episode. Lastly, we introduce a method to learn from failures to improve the exploration efficiency. So this is our proposed framework, which we call the Incremental Learning Model, or ILM. The inputs to the ILM are the prior action models, which can be an incomplete or completely empty action model, meaning that there are no predicates in the preconditions for the effects. And we have the planning problem, which defines the initial state and the post state. These are given to the planning module, which performs either exploration or exploitation, which is our reinforcement learning algorithm. The resulting action is then executed, and the state transition, which is the pre-state, the action selected, and the post-state, is our training data. The planning module then updates and revises the prior action models based on this newly acquired training data. And then in the next step of the planning process, we then use the updated model. If the action fails to execute, this field instance is then recorded and given to the planning module, and the planning module could avoid making the same mistake. So I'll go into further details of our contributions. To learn the action models incrementally, we extend upon an existing rules learner from Pasula. So what this learner does is that it starts a greedy search from an empty set of model. It will then randomly select a search operator. For example, we have a search operator that adds a predicate to, for example, the precondition of action model. So by adding a different predicate, it could generate a candidate, a set of rule sets. And it could then evaluate the score of these candidates with a score function that is shown here. At every step, it could greedily increase the candidate rule set. So you could select the rule set at the highest score. You could discard the rest of the candidates, and then you could apply another search operator in the next step. The search stops when the score could no longer increase. So what's in the score function? This is the log likelihood of the training data given the learned model, and this is the complexity of the model, which is basically the number of predicates in the action models. And we introduce a new term, which we call the deviation penalty, where R0 is our prior action model. So basically, this allows us to start the greedy search from the prior action model R0. And what this does is that we bound the number of search operators that can be applied on the prior action models. So we're trying to bound the search around the prior action models R0. And we want the deviation penalty to be small if R0 is inaccurate, meaning that we allow the search to mutate the candidate rule set, and vice versa. Okay, so however, we can't tell how accurate the learned model is because we do not know the true model. So we have to empirically estimate how good this learned model is, and we introduce the metric called reliability. So a learned model is reliable if the action has been executed successfully, and that the resulting state is being described by the model. New training data does not suggest that we should use a different model, and the training data, of course, it has to be reached in the first place. So we define the richness of the training model, of the training data, as the sum of the dissimilarity in the pre-states of the training data. So the dissimilarity is basically the number of predicates that are different between this pair of states. We could also use reliability as an intrinsic motivation in reinforcement learning, where during exploration, we choose actions that have less reliable learned models. Another contribution of our work is that we could introduce a method to learn from failure. When an action fails to execute, for example, we have here the action pick up, robot 1 picks up object 2 at waypoint 2, and this is the current state, and it fails to pick up object 2 because the robot has only one ripple and is holding on to object 1. So we then leave the states, the predicates in the state to this SL by replacing the objects with the variables in the action. And we retain the relevant predicates, which are shown in green. So the relevant predicates are basically predicates that could possibly be in the action model. So this is we record this field instance, and because we lifted the state representation, this field instance could still work even if the objects in the planning domain changes. Okay, so how do we check if the action could fail? We basically perform the same steps here, and we get the relevant states of the relevant predicates of the current state. And this current state must have at least one predicate that's not in ST. If there's at least one predicate, then this predicate could possibly support the precondition of the action. If it doesn't have at least one predicate, then we know for sure that this action could fail to execute, and the planning body could then reject this action, and you will never execute it. So we evaluate our performance of IRM with 3 benchmark planning problems. There's called a tire world, exploding rocks world, and the logistics domain, which I described briefly earlier on. So we ran 15 independent trials of 10 episodes each sequentially, and we increased the scale of the planning problems in each subsequent episode. So the learned model and the learned failures from previous episodes are being used in the current episode, but we do not accumulate the training data. So for the first episode, the prior action model is an empty model. There is no preconditions or effects. So we benchmark our algorithm IRM with RMAX, and we allow RMAX to accumulate the training data from previous episodes to make the comparison more competitive. And we also benchmark IRM against 2 variants of IRM, which is we call it IRM minus R, which does not use reliability, and IRM minus T, which does not learn from failure. So we want to see what's the contributions of reliability and learning from failure. So we evaluate our performance with the correctness of the learned model, which is basically defined as an average variational distance between the learned model and the true model. And you can see that IRM, which is represented by the blue box here, it outperforms the other algorithms in general for all planning episodes and for all 3 domains. And also you can see that the variational distance increases over each subsequent episode. So the model is being learned incrementally, even though we do not use the training data. And another metric that we evaluate our performance by is the goal directedness, which is defined as the number of trials which the goal state is reached. So why is this important? Is that sometimes we do not need to learn the entire model to reach the goal, we just need to learn the relevant parts of the model. So this is a different metric as compared to correctness. So you can see that IRM, again, it outperforms RMAX. This is IRM for the 3 domains here, and it outperforms RMAX. And we see that when we do not learn from failure, the performance is very bad, and most of the time we do not reach the goal state. This is because most of the actions resulted in failure, and the negative examples are not useful for learning the model. But however, because we learn from failure, we sort of exploit the information from negative examples, whereas for the model learner that learns the PPTDL action models, they do not exploit that information in negative examples. And also, while IRM minus T uses reliability as intrinsic motivation, it doesn't work if the action doesn't execute successfully, because nothing is being learned and reliability is basically 0 for all the actions. So there's no intrinsic motivation at all. And in conclusion, I have introduced a method to learn the action models incrementally over planning episodes with ability to use past training data and also an empirical mean to estimate the learning progress without knowing the true model, and also a novel method to learn from failure by avoiding repeats of similar failures. So that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Dmitro, and I will start with describing the problem that we are trying to solve, and then I will proceed to describing the main idea of this work. And the problem is that of temporally consistent exploration in continuous control reinforcement learning. Traditional Gaussian exploration model is not temporally consistent, and that leads to two major issues. The first issue is that it does not provide effective exploration in many environments, and its efficiency drops even further as the action rate increases. The second issue is that it results in non-smooth exploration trajectories and jerky movement when attempted on a physical robot. That leads to hardware damage and precludes us from running physical robots at high speeds. In order to visualize better these issues, we designed a simple simulated environment where in a two-dimensional square arena, the agent, using continuous velocity control, is trying to reach the target. The following video shows Gaussian exploration at 10 Hz control in this case. You can see that the agent is not very effective at exploring the space and its behavior is not smooth. Things get much worse if we increase the control rate to, say, 50 Hz. In this case, the agent barely explores at all, and it's effectively locked around its initial position. Similar issue exists in physical robots. The following video shows your fiber robotic arm controlled at 125 Hz continuous velocity control. And you can see that Gaussian exploration is extremely inefficient in exploring the space. Researchers and engineers have faced these issues for years, and a number of approaches and workarounds were proposed. And each of those approaches had its own shortcomings. In this work, we try to offer a principled approach to temporally consistent and smooth exploration right from the start with randomly initialized agents, which would avoid these shortcomings. And in some cases, our approach is complementary to the previously proposed ideas, and in other cases, it offers a more principled alternative. So the basic idea of this work comes from the following observation. In case of Gaussian policy, actions follow normal distribution where mean and variance are represented by function approximators such as deep neural networks. In this case, actions can be represented in the following form as a sum of a deterministic mean given by a neural network and a sample from a white noise process with standard normal distribution scaled by the variance also given by a neural network. Now, mu and sigma terms here typically change their values slowly between subsequent states, particularly at high action rates, because neural networks are typically continuous functions. The epsilon term here is a problem. It's a sample from a white noise process, and it can change its value abruptly and as frequently as we will try to sample actions. This term introduces inconsistent and not smooth behavior that we saw before. So the basic idea of this work is to replace the epsilon term with the value of a stochastic process x, such that each value would also have standard normal distribution, but the subsequent values would be temporally consistent, temporally coherent. And in order to do that, we propose to use autoregressive stochastic processes. Just a tiny bit of background. An autoregressive process of order p is defined with a simple linear relationship, where the value at the current time step is equal to a linear combination of past p values plus a sample from a white noise process with a finite variance. The coefficients phi k of the linear combination and the variance of a white noise component determine the properties and the behavior of this process. So the first major contribution of this work is we derived a general family of stationary autoregressive processes such that each value of those processes has standard normal distribution and the degree of temporal consistency between subsequent process values can be continuously adjusted with a single scalar parameter from white noise at one extreme to a constant function at the other extreme. And the following figure shows examples of derived processes. Here, rows correspond to different process orders, and columns correspond to different values of alpha parameter. The first column here represents white Gaussian noise. So basically, the first column here represents traditional Gaussian exploration noise. As alpha parameter increases between 0 and 1, the temporal consistency of process realizations continuously increases as well. Now, intuitively, you can see that the processes in this first column is not something you would want to run on a physical robot if actions represent low-level control, such as velocity or torque. On the other hand, trajectories in the right side of this figure resemble much more reasonable exploration behavior. So we would like to build an agent that implements the following action distribution, where mu and sigma are function approximators, such as deep neural networks, and x is the value of the derived autoregressive process. Turns out, in order to do that, we need a fixed size history of past states and actions. The second major contribution of this work is derivation of a history-dependent policy function, which we called autoregressive policy, that results in samples distributed according to this desired equation. The policy depends on an extended state, which in addition to a current environment state, contains also a fixed size history of past states and actions. And the size of the history is equal to the order of the underlying autoregressive process. In this extended state space, the policy has a Gaussian distribution with mean and variance of a particular form. This means that any algorithm that is compatible with stochastic Gaussian policies can be used to train autoregressive policies. Basically, any off-the-shelf algorithm can be used to learn autoregressive policies. The policy function has several important properties. The first important property is that the dimensionality of function approximators is not affected by the fact that we are using history. Each occurrence of mu and sigma here accept only the states from the original space as input. So the size of the neural network is not increased because of the history. The second important property is that when sigma value approaches 0, the variance of this distribution approaches 0 as well, and the second term here disappears. The policy becomes a deterministic policy given by a function approximator mu. This means that the best policy in the set of proposed autoregressive policies is at least as good as the best deterministic policy given by function approximator mu. And finally, we do not impose any restrictions on mu and sigma, so they pretty much can be arbitrary function approximators, and and therefore arbitrary neural networks. We conducted a series of empirical experiments where we compared autoregressive policies with conventional Gaussian policy, and in all the learning experiments we used Baseline's OpenAI PPO algorithm. The first set of experiments we conducted on the same simple simulated environment that I showed in the beginning of this talk. In this case, it's a sparse reward task. The agent only gets reward when it reaches the target to within a certain distance. We repeated the experiment at a wide range of different action frequencies. And you can see that at the lowest action rate, at 1 Hz, Gaussian policy is performing well. It's able to learn an effective behavior. However, its performance decreases dramatically as the action rate increases. At higher action rates, Gaussian policy is not able to make any learning progress. Basically, it's not able to discover the reward signal. On the other hand, autoregressive policies were able to find effective behavior across a wide range of different action frequencies. And the policies with larger values of alpha parameter, which corresponds to higher degree of temporal consistency between subsequent samples, performed better at a higher control rate. Next, we conducted a series of experiments on standard MuJoCo tasks. All of these tasks have dense reward, which basically means that it's not immediately obvious that a temporally consistent exploration is necessary here. And yet we found that autoregressive policies performed on par with the Gaussian policy in all cases, and in some cases they outperformed Gaussian policy substantially. For example, in a streamer environment, autoregressive policies perform much better than Gaussian policy. Finally, we conducted a set of learning experiments on a physical robot. On a Euro 5 robotic arm, we designed a richer task where the agent, using continuous velocity control, is trying to reach a randomly generated target in the space around it. And we conducted learning experiments at 25 and 125 Hz control rate. At 25 Hz, the Gaussian policy was able to make some learning progress. However, its performance was already not as good as that of autoregressive policy. At 125 Hz control rate, Gaussian policy was not able to make any learning progress. Basically, it gave a flat line. It wasn't able to discover the reward. On the other hand, autoregressive policies were able to find effective behavior for a subset of random seeds. And the policy's larger value of alpha parameter performed better in this case. The following video shows behavior of randomly initialized autoregressive and Gaussian agents in a simple toy environment. You can at 10 Hz control. You can see that autoregressive agent explores the space much more effectively, and its trajectory is smooth. Similarly, at 50 Hz control, where Gaussian agent barely moves, autoregressive agent with larger value of alpha parameter maintains consistent exploration, and its behavior is still smooth, the trajectory is smooth. And finally, on a physical robot, on the Euro 5 robotic arm, autoregressive agent at 125 Hz continuous control is much more efficient in exploring the space compared to Gaussian agent. And the robot motions are consistent and smooth. This is all for me. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Hi, I have a question about the alpha parameter. So could you explain why only in MuJoCo streamer domain the alpha 0.5 is better than 0.3, but in all other domains, smaller alpha values were better than larger values? And why did it happen on this sense?
Sure. So the optimal value of alpha parameter depends on the environment, and it also depends on action rate that we use in this environment. And MujiCode tasks, all of the MujiCode tasks actually have different simulated time step duration. Like if you look into the parameters of MujiCode environments, they have different action rates. Which is why in some cases policy with larger alpha perform better, and in some other cases policy with smaller alpha perform better. Generally, we found that for each particular environment we need to tune alpha to find the best value that is optimal for that particular environment.
Do you think you trained a Gaussian agent that gave it rewards for exploring novel states that you would imagine for this?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's actually one of the previously proposed approaches that I listed on my slides. The issue with this approach is that agent starts exploring efficiently only after some amount of learning, right? The randomly initialized agent is unaware about the reward function. And in order to learn, it already needs to explore and discover rewarding states. So applying autoregressive policies is completely compatible with this idea. We can use more advanced reward function and at the same time have temporally consistent exploration right from the start with randomly initialized agent.
Do you compare your method with curiosity-driven exploration?
No, I haven't, and again, similarly to this question, curiosity-driven exploration basically modifies the reward function, right? So the agent will exhibit curiosity only after some amount of learning, which already requires exploring and discovering new states. So this approach is completely compatible with curiosity idea because we can use curiosity-based reward function and use autoregressive policy for temporally consistent exploration. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. My name is Incremental. We are from Human Machine Interaction Lab from Vietnam National University. Here is my research joined with my student who is first name here, first name, but he's not here today. Actually, this paper is come from our research on robot navigation. We found the interesting question is how we can find out the similar pattern in different tasks. So we come up with a paper is sharing experience in multi-task reinforcement learning. Okay, so first we will talk about what is our motivation more deeply about how we can get sharing among the tasks. Then we talk about the research from the how to define the framework that we can cooperate between the tasks. Then we find out the agent. This agent have to learn among tasks to find out the sharing reason. We also discuss about this sharing agent to consistent with the sharing experience framework. Then we also discuss some experiment results. First is some more about the motivation. For example, if we consider about the navigation task, if we have many tasks here to direct to the goal, we consider as different tasks. So So we can find out some like direction to some task. If we can find what is the similar task here, so we can learn the task more efficiently by sampling more in these regions. So that is our motivation. But for the research, we have to make assumption that in different tasks we have the same environment, the same feedback from the environment. For example, what is the transition between the state if we take the action? But it is different. We work for different tasks. And from the motivation, we have some questions is how we can define the framework, how we can distinguish between the tasks and get the sharing tasks between them, and how to define the agent to learn the task. So that is some question. So we know that in a simple framework we use a policy gradient here. We learn the task by taking some example, then we update the policy by policy gradient. That is traditional task between we have multitask here between task I, and we make the sharing confidence by using another agent here. We learn the sharing region by multitask. We make the agent to get the sample, and we discover which is the sharing task, which is similar task between the agents. So we can use this task to provide the sample from the sharing agent. So this agent can learn more efficiently. And we come up with the policy gradient here. We know that the objective of policy gradient that we have to maximize the expectation of the reward. So we redefine the objective function by the weight importance sampling. We suppose that we have the agent to know what is the sharing agent we call G. So we make the sample from the G agent, sharing agent. Then we get some important sampling here. We use this to train the agent by using the policy gradient. So the benefit of this framework is we sample efficiency because we don't have to sample another region. We use this sharing agent to sample. So that is possibly to make the learning more efficient if we can diverse the sharing agents, sharing regions. Sorry. So that is the framework. But to use the framework, we have to define the agent. The agent have to learn what is the region to share. We use many tasks to make the sample. Then we recognize which is the region to share. Here is the we decide by the label if two regions have the same positive reward or negative reward, then that is the share region, otherwise not share. And we use the advantage reward to make the importance of this state. Then we use the agents like binary classification. We add more the weight with the reward, and the label is the share or not share. So we can define the agent to define what is the state should be shared among the tasks. So now we have the framework to make the share between the agents. In multitask, we have the agent to learn the share. Then we discuss what is the consistent between the agent and the sharing regions. We define the 4 cases like positive, negative with share or non-share. Then we discuss what is the true or what is the false in decision of G agents. In true positive agent, that in share region, the agent decides right, so it's much better sampling. in the region that is not shared, but the agent decide to share. That is wrong. But we have wait here to prevent the wrong updating. In early stage, maybe we have some like updating from the wrong sharing region, but time by time this would make the preventing in the wrong updating. In another case, is true negative and false negative, positive. Sorry, the framework has no effect because we don't share. We don't make sharing between the tasks. So with the framework and with the agent, we make some experiment. Here's some agent we consider. The first one is Oracle sharing. That means we provide what is sharing region, then use this region to make the multitask learning. So that is upper bound of our research. Then actually the sharing agents to learn what is the sharing. That here the framework with sharing agents. And another is baseline. Baseline one is the task is training independently, and the baseline two is the task training with the compound policy, and maybe we can use A3C. For the configuration, we have three simple tasks. The first is the map to discover what is benefit of the framework. I mean, we have distinguished task here, task 1 and task 2. The second map is more complex, like a whole with many rooms, where also many tasks here. We want to discover what is the sharing between the position of agent. And the last one is really simple. In this configuration, there's no reason to share the task, but we would like to discover the effect of our framework in this type task. And the action is 8 directions, and the reward is it's more reward to encourage the shortest path, and the big one positive is when the agent reaching the goal. In the first configuration, we can see the baseline by the red light here. If they can learn it's long time to make the converge. To the baseline tool, that means many agents using compound policy. It's by the blue line. It's more efficient, but it has stack in local optimum. But the sharing framework is much better. Oracle sharing is upper bound, you can see it. And the G sharing is also can learn later than Oracle sharing. For more complex room, so we can see baseline 2 still gets stuck in the local optimum because it have many tasks here. It negate each other. But in our framework, it improve the learning rate and now optimal, local optimal here. The last one is the simple environment, simple configuration we would like to know about. So here's there's no sharing ribbon, but we can change more time. It still get a good result. So we come up with some conclusion in our paper. Is we can proposing one agent can learn the sharing ribbon between the tasks, and this make the learning process efficiently. In the future, we are going to make more experience in more complex system, like we use visual state to much complex system. So it's our research. Thank you for your attention and welcome.
How to find shared regions in the practical tasks, where, for example, we have camera, the sensory data comes from a camera, it's multi-dimensional data set and it's continuous. Let's say with physical robots, how do we find these shared regions?
Yeah, actually in this paper we are doing with a very simple environment, and in the actually we are doing with more complex. First we have to define like what is the representation of state, like how the camera get the vector representation. Then we can get to like in this region we have many like state here. We define state in this region by this, like just present the state before the coming with the framework. But actually the searching area is more huge. So thank you.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is So I'm from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Currently I'm doing my PhD in computer science and engineering. Today I'm going to present our paper, Adversarial Imputation Learning from Complete Demonstrations. So first I will introduce what is imputation learning and the relevant algorithms. Then I will point out the problems we're studying in this paper. And in order to solve this paper, we conduct some theoretical analysis, and based on that analysis, we propose the algorithms. So that is action-guided adversarial imputation learning. Then we show some experimental results to show the effectiveness and robustness of our algorithm. So maybe I can use So first thing first, what is imputation? What is imputation learning? So imputation learning is to learn a policy, learn a behavior policy from demonstrations. Then you might be wondering, what are demonstrations, right? Demonstrations actually presenting the normal state action trajectories. So here we use the talk to donate the demonstration. So in this talk, each pair actually indicates the action to take at the state in between. It actually tells the robot which action should take at this state. So in order to find the policy from demonstrations, there are two types of method. One is supervised learning. That is, we directly learn the mapping from the state to actions in a supervised manner. So actually, supervised learning assumes that data should be IID, identically and independently distributed. But here, the data actually are correlated. They have some sequential correlations. So basically, we cannot use supervised learning to learn a very good model for this. To learn a very good policy for this under this scenario. The second method, which is popularly used in teacher learning, is inverse reinforcement learning. That is to first try to find the cost or reward to describe the demonstrations. In plain language, that means to find the underlying motivation of why the demonstrator should make action like this. Then based on their cost or reward function, we find a policy. But the problem is, in intuition learning, most of the demonstrations, like almost every demonstration, are assumed to be in the pair of state action, in the form of state action pairs. But that means the actions for each demonstration state is fully observable and available. But actually, this assumption does not hold for robot control. So in robot control, actually, the actions are partially observable or even unobservable. So that, like for example, here is an example. So this demonstrator wants to show how to walk to a robot. Actually, what are the states? The states are actually the joint positions and joint velocities. Then what are the actions? Actions are actually the forces applied to each joint. So the forces generated by the human is actually the muscle contraction, which cannot be easily detected. Even if we can detect that forces, that force cannot be easily applied to a robot, because the robot and the humans have different body shape and they have different physical structures. So that means even though we have the actions may not be valid to a robot. Although there are some studies which focus on how to derive some policies from demonstrations without actions, by trying to recover actions from the state factors so that we get the complete demonstrations, or they try to learn from the observations. But they mainly focus on very specific areas. So in this paper, actually, we want to solve this problem in a very general scenario, like under which condition we can find a policy from incomplete demonstrations. That means from demonstrations with missing actions. So traditionally, this part, from complete actions we can find the policy. This has already been proven. So in this paper we want to study. So can we find any policy, expert policy from the demonstrations with missing actions? So the first question we want to ask is whether it is possible to learn a policy from demonstrations with missing actions. So the second question we want to ask is, if that is yes, if the answer to the first question is yes, then how do we find it? So with these two questions in mind, let's first investigate what's the general formulation of imitation learning. Imitation learning is often formulated as inverse reinforcement learning. So in reinforcement learning, this is objective function. It has two loops. The outer loops try to find the cost, try to find the underlying motivation of why the demonstrator should make actions like this. And based on that cost, we use the reinforcement learning to find the policy. And these two processes alternate between each other, so that we can find the policy. So actually, this is quite computational extensive. And it is shown that in this book, the generative adversarial intuition learning, it is shown that this objective, in order to optimize this objective, is actually, like optimizing this objective is actually equivalent to find some distribution machine under this regularization. So this is like these two distributions, this rho pi and rho pi e actually describe two distributions. Rho actually describes the state action distributions under current policy pi. Then this objective basically describes, in order to find the expert policy, we need to find some, we need to compare the distributions generated by the current policy, and we need to compare this distribution, state action distribution generated by the current policy with the state action pairs in the demonstration. And we can define the special form of this regularizer as this one. By defining the regularizer in this form, actually we can save a lot of computations. We can skip like this two-loop automation. So this is called adversary imitation learning. But actually there is a problem in this objective function. Basically in this objective function we need to approximate this value. Actually this value depends on the d. And D is dependent on the cost function. Here, if we were to approximate this value, basically we need to have the information of state and actions. But actually, here we consider the problem. The problem is we don't necessarily need the action information, right? So the thing is, if we assume the cost is defined mainly on the states, that means we just discard this action. Then actually this value can be approximated by the state trajectories only. That means if we want to approximate this value, we can use the state trajectories to approximate it. But the assumption is the cost should be defined mainly on the states. So let me recap. Does this assumption hold? Actually, yes. So like in robot control, like this is like a simulated robot, right? If we want a robot to work like human being, what we really care? Actually, we really care about the states. Whether it works like human being, the state, the positions and the velocities should be like the human motion. We don't necessarily care about the action, like how much force the robot apply. We don't actually care. So this assumption usually holds in robot control. So actually, this assumption makes sense. Then based on this theoretical analysis, then we propose this algorithm. That is action-guided adversarial intuition learning. So the idea is very simple. So first, actually I have already shown that we can learn a policy from the state trajectories, then we can directly separate the demonstrations into two parts. The first part is the state trajectories, and the second part is action trajectories. I will come back to this trajectory later. So now we can use adversarial imitation learning to learn a policy from the state trajectories only. So that's kind of the, we can learn a policy from the state trajectories. Then how about the action trajectory? So the idea is very straightforward. So actually we use action trajectories if they are available to provide some auxiliary information to the learning process. Like here, for example, if we have some demonstrated actions in this state, we try to compare the action distributions in this state with the action distributions generated by the policy. Then we use this policy. Then we use this information to accelerate the learning process. We use the mutual information to measure the distribution difference between these two distributions. Actually, the mutual information can be hard to estimate. So we use the idea of info gain, that is information generative adversarial nets, to approximate this value. So to sum it up, basically in this method we have three components. The first component is a discriminator. It tries to tell whether the state is from the action, whether the state is from the demonstration or from the policy. Then this is a generator. Generator is actually a policy which takes the output from the discriminator and from the guide, then update this parameter theta to update its the policy. Then here this guide actually is what I mentioned before. It's actually we use we use any available action distribution to guide the learning process. Then we test our algorithms against the TRPO, GALE, and state GALE. So TRPO is actually the expert here, the cluster region policy optimization. This level, the TRPO needs to know the true rewards so it can get the expert policy. And the GALE is kind of the state of the art in intuition learning, and it assumes that the demonstration should be complete. And here we also, in order to validate our idea, we also use the state GALE. That means we only learn from state trajectories, and here is our proposed algorithm. And we use a TRPO to generate trajectories as demonstrations, as the expert demonstrations, and then we randomly mask out actions to control the input binders. The point 0 means that all the actions are available. The 0.75, that means 70% of the actions in each demonstration are masked out. So experiment around for 6 times with different initialization seeds, and we use empirical returns to evaluate the performance. And the final one will show demo. So here we use 4 tasks that range from the easiest one, the carport, to the very complicated one, the humanoid. And in order to check whether our assumption holds in this task, we actually check the codes of this different environment implementation. Actually, in most of the gym environments, actually the reward is defined mainly on the states, and the action contributes very little. So that means our assumption holds for basically all tasks. So this is our overall result. basically this is the TRPO, the GAL, and learning from the state trajectories only. So here actually we can show that our algorithm achieves comparable results with the TRPO. Because actually our algorithm doesn't take the full action information. It only takes partial information. So that means even with partial action information, our algorithm still delivers comparable information, comparable performance to the TRPO and the GAL. And another very interesting finding that actually incorporating more actions does not necessarily improve the performance. So that's kind of very interesting. We also analyzed this in our paper. Actually, we think that this kind of like incorporating more information, actually the information may not be very useful to training. Like for example, actually, how can we get the demonstrations? We use this TRPO. We use one checkpoint from the TRPO, and then run that checkpoint to get some trajectories, and using these trajectories as the demonstration. But in these trajectories, because of the because we train the TRPO, it put it at very unstable. So once we select a checkpoint from the unstable training process, that demonstration could be suboptimal. That could so in that sense, incorporating more actions will not improve the performance. And this is the training curve. Actually, with less information, we still get comparable, even better training performance than TRPO and GAL. Especially with those very complicated tasks like humanoid. We actually, actually it's quite interesting. In humanoid, actually, with more information, we can train better. We also test our algorithms when we change the incompleteness ratio so that in O2D and humanoid, we can consistently get a good result. So here is a demo. So here is the demonstration data, and this is the motion capture format. Actually, we just play the motion capture data on this capture. This is non physics. This is not physics. This is just a kinematic model. Then we train the policy just using the state trajectories, and this is what we get. Okay, sorry, I forgot to mention that. Actually, this environment was created by our group, and actually we created this environment only for imitation learning. Because actually, we want to compare our algorithms just based on the motion capture data. So we also release our code at this, if you're interested, you can like using play with our codes. Thank you.
So your main assumption is that the cost is a function of this state and not the action. So at least some environment where the assumption is not
Actually, based on the theoretical analysis, if the cost is not like independent of the action, then we're going to find the policy we want. So we are not guaranteed that we can find the policy in the demonstrations. Yes. Can you speak louder?
In tasks, there is a state depends not only on the position, but also on the slowing out environment. For example, in grasping tasks, the state depends not only on the robot position, but also on the object in the gripper.
Yes.
Would this approach work in those cases where you cannot expect to have the same grasp and the same object after expert demonstrations?
Yeah, we haven't considered any interaction with the objects in this experiment. We also, like here, all the states are actually internal variables of the robot. So I think that's a very interesting topic. Actually, we are now considering how to using the imputation learning, using this method in 3D environment, how to consider the surroundings and try to incorporate this.
So you suppose the state completely now?
Yes, here it is. Because actually here state is the internal variables like the joint configurations and the velocities and all this stuff is already known by the robot.
Which means what you imitate is the trajectory and not necessarily, for example, the final state, intermediate states that you need the robot to achieve.
Yeah, actually here, like we want robot to imitate the demonstrations. Demonstration is actually a set of goal state. It's like the robot has to achieve this state first and then another state. It's like a trajectory of states. Questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor to stand here to present my paper. I am just on behalf of all the authors to present this paper. My presentation will include the following 5 parts. Firstly, we introduce the research background. As we all know, there are many different algorithms for reinforcement learning problems, such as popular reinforcement learning algorithms and the neural evolution approaches. It is worth noting that the neural evolution approaches is applying black box optimization methods to train neural networks. And among these algorithms, evolution strategy has been demonstrated to have the ability to train neural networks well and can well accomplish the deep reinforcement learning task. The most important part is the ES variety proposed by OpenAI, and it has motivated several nice works from scientists from company or universities, such as the later 3 algorithms. However, existing ES varieties for deep reinforcement learning only involve the plain varieties, but do not attempt to adopt one of the most efficient ES, that is CMA-ES. In fact, CMA-ES has many nice properties and has been successful in solving optimization problems in low to medium dimension. On the other hand, CMA-ES also has some disadvantages. For example, it has high space and comes with complexity. And thus, it is unsuited to the training of deep neural networks and the solving of deep reinforcement learning tasks. So, the present research status is that the research of applying CMA-ES to reinforcement learning is still a gap. In fact, the issue of how to apply CMA-ES or other advanced ES varieties to deep reinforcement learning in an efficient way is a research area, and it has a great practical value. Considering the present research status, our paper proposed a restart-based Learn 1 evolution strategy for reinforcement learning. And the proposed algorithm can be regarded as a simplified CMA-ES, and it can also keep the excellent performance of CMA-ES. Moreover, it is of linear time complexity and low space complexity, thus making it suitable for dealing with the training of deep neural networks and also the solving of deep reinforcement learning problems. Now we will illustrate our purpose method. Unlike all the existing ES varieties for reinforcement learning, our purpose method attempts to use the Gaussian distribution model, which involves the distribution mean, the mutation strength, and also the convergence matrix. And the most important is that the convergence matrix is set by using the equation suite, which involves the principal search direction. In fact, this new model can help us to testing the main search direction To realize the new model, our purpose model need to maintain several important variables at each generation, including the 3 ones. In this way, our purpose model can achieve the adaptation of the distribution mean, the mutation strength, and also the principal search direction. This is the framework of our purpose model. It mainly includes 3 important procedures. The first one is the construction of new solutions. This is based on the automation distribution model. And the second is involve the adapting of distribution mean and principal search direction, which can be seen by the 2 equations. And the third one is the adaptation of mutation strength. In our purpose model, we also design 2 procedures for escaping. Two procedures for escaping local optimum. The first one is the adaptation of the number of entities. This can add more diversity to the population, and also the adapting of distribution mean at the later stage. The second one is the restart procedure. First of all, we can conduct analysis of our purpose model. We can see that the purpose model is of linear time complexity and low space complexity. This is the most important character compared to the ES proposed by OpenAI. And now we focus on the analysis of the updating of distribution mean. We can find that the updating formula is something like the natural gradient in OpenAI ES. So, in our purpose model, the updating rule of the distribution mean can serve as an estimator to the natural gradient. Next, we focus on the adapting of principal search direction. We can equation 6 is the equation used in our code, but we can since our purpose, the adapting of distribution mean can serve as an estimate to the natural gradient. So we can replace this term with the natural gradient. So we can compare with the momentum method. We can find that they are very simple. So the updating of the principal search direction in our purpose method is like the momentum methods. So let's give some experimental results. The first one is the first part of the experiment is conducted on 3 problems from the OpenAI gym, including 3 simple problems. Since these problems are simple, so we use simple neural network with 2 hidden layers to act as the network to be trained by ES. From this feature, we can find that our purpose methods can it covers better on 2 problems, but a little worse on this problem. And the second part of experience is conducted on 4 category games. This is some related results. We can focus on these games. On these games, we can find that these three, including the NSES, NSRES, and also our purpose method, have a nice performance compared to the other algorithms. Because since this game has involved the issue of local optimal, this problem is the same, and we can find that our purpose, also perform best. And the last game is from the paper of ES, we can find that they have some interesting familiar, and we can observe from the results. We can find that our purpose also perform better than the existing ES varieties. So here comes the conclusion of our paper and the future research project. It is worth noting that our work is the first attempt of applying CMS to reinforcement learning problems. But although our purpose method achieves some power on some games and some simple purpose, but the effect of our purpose algorithm on more reinforcement tasks can be further investigated with the support of more advanced hardware devices. That's all. Thanks for listening.
What do you mean by time complexity? Evolution search is a heuristic algorithm. It doesn't guarantee any solution, right? The longer you run it, the higher the chance that you will find something. So what does time complexity mean in this case?
The time complexity. In fact, the original CMES has very high time complexity, and our purpose ES variety can reduce the complexity of the original CMES. This is the most important characteristic of our work.
So is this time to solution, or what this time represents? So this time complexity, what is the time to what? So the time complexity, what does time represent? Is this time to reach the solution, or what is like the time term? What does it mean in this case?
Diversity.
Sorry?
You mean what?
Okay, maybe I can ask a follow-up question.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, on your first experiment, you had confidence intervals, but then on your second experiment, did you only run all of your games once, or how did you get those?
No. Since our lab does not have many machines, so we just test the performance of our purpose algorithm on some related simple games, and the more complicated games we do not have the ability to conduct this kind of experiments.
Yeah, but did you only play each game once? Because you haven't got any confidence interval on those games that you got on your first experiment, so you only played each game, each algorithm once.
In fact, we have conducted experiments on on a relative touch, on relative hard game on. In fact, we have conducted some kind of experience on one hard games on hard game, but we cannot make our progress algorithm obtain nice performance on this game under the limited time.